All right. Let us get this road. Let's get this show on the road. Let's get this road show on the show. Can everyone hear me okay? Hopefully. We will find out. Yep. Yes. Good. Good. All right. So we're about to paint some miniatures once again. Hopefully some of you were able to get my last one, which was on metallics. If not, it will be, we recorded it and it will be up on YouTube at some point on the Flying Frog site. So we should be good to go. Kind of wipe my glasses off, man. My glasses are so dirty. It's a normal thing. Just like my airbrush. My airbrush is always dirty too. All right. So today we're going to be talking about some light and shadows. And I know some of you are experienced painters and some of you have not painted at all. So it's kind of a weird class. I have to kind of meld it all together. And hopefully all of you kind of get what I'm talking about. Lighting can always be a hard subject to do. Because, you know, you're putting paint on a model and then people are like, put highlights on it. And you're like, where do I put that? So one of the easy ways that I've found, or one of the ways that has helped me the most, is a Zenithal Prime. And you might be wondering, what is a Zenithal Prime? Well, I'm going to show you one. All right. So let's get our paint cam going here. And this would be a Zenithal Prime. This is one of the undead guys. One of the new sculpts. Part of it's painted in the bottom, but you can see the top of it is black and white, basically. So basically what's happening is you're putting a black primer on your model, and then you're spraying white from above. Now you can do this with the rattle cans. It's a little bit less effective, I guess. It works, but it's not perfect. Or you can do it with your airbrush. And I'm going to show you how I would do that right here. So I'm going to grab my airbrush. This is a Reaper Vex airbrush from Reaper Miniatures. Really good airbrush. I actually helped design this, so I love this airbrush so much. It's nice because it sprays both general purpose sprays and it also does high detail stuff, so that's pretty nice. All right, so I'm going to grab, I've already primed it black. And one thing when you're priming miniatures, always remember to let them sit for at least 24 hours. This allows the paint to fully cure. That goes for any primer and any paint, really. If you're having a problem with your paint wiping off, that's no good. No bueno. So I'm going to put some of this. This is Stynylrez. It's airbrush ready white primer. Just going to pour it in here. This stuff is the best stuff I've used. Very good, from a company called Badger Airbrush. So I'm going to do a little test spray on my mat here. And if you're wondering, I'm just using a puddle pad. This is for if your dog goes potty in the house a lot. Hopefully they go potty on this. But we found that this works really good for just overspray and cleaning up if you drip. Or I spilled some isopropyl alcohol on my mat earlier today and just soaked it all up. It's really nice. So for doing our Zenithal Prime, you want to go all the way around the model at about a 45-degree angle. So I'm keeping my airbrush at about an angle like this. And I'm just going to start building up highlights, basically. Now you can spray a bunch or you can spray just a little bit. See, I'm spraying just a little bit of spray and it almost looks like it's gray, which is perfect. Some people ask why I don't just spray gray down first. I actually like, I think there's more contrast by spraying white, meaning there's more difference between the colors. Sometimes if you spray gray on there, you end up losing some contrast. So I like just using black and white. And if any of you have questions along the way, be sure to put it in the chat. Liz is here. She's just getting, she's put it in the Q&A section. And she will ask me the questions as we go. We're making coffee right now because it's late and we need a pick-me-up. So I'm just spraying, adding a little bit more as we go. And then maybe I start defining a light source. So on this guy, I like normal Zenithal Primes is just a perfect high noon light source, but I think that's a little bit boring, or I like to be a little bit more I don't know, more exciting. I think of it as like movie lighting. So I'm going to actually start putting more white on this side of the model right here. He's kind of looking over to this direction, so I think a light source coming from there would be pretty good. So I can start by building up light just on that one side. I'll do some on the book too. A little bit more on the face here. His back. Right, so we got it like that. And you can see I kind of have really good contrast. I have really dark areas over here, and if I look at it from this direction, it's pretty much almost black still. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. I'm looking for very bright on one side, very dark on the other side. Now, sometimes you're spraying or you're going to paint really light colors, so you might want to spray some white on this side too, just so that it's not quite so dark. But I like to have my models kind of dark and moody and bright and happy on the other side. So this works out pretty good. I'm going to spray a little bit more on this book. And maybe on his arm right back here. Just a little bit more, a little bit on the hat. Very cool. That guy's looking pretty awesome. Now I'll put my white back in the bottle. We'll just spray this out. Oops. So the cool thing is, my model isn't very speckly at all. I got a good clean airbrush on there, but sometimes you get a little speckles. If you're using a rattle can, you'll have a bunch of speckles, and that doesn't matter because your paint's going to cover up all of this. This is just there to give you an idea of where the light should be. Clean this out. All right, so that gave us our highlights. Now, how do we paint on top of this? I always say this is like a roadmap to how to paint the rest of the model. So how would you go about painting on this? And this is where it gets kind of fun. So let's say we want a purple outfit on this guy. He's got purple robes. And maybe we'll do that shade of purple, and maybe we want it to be kind of funky. Go down to a darker red. So the purple I just used was Darkstone purple, and then I'm going to be using a little bit of Crimson Hand red. And we will also add a little bit of black to our palette, so we can get some nice shadows. And what else? Everything, yes. We'll do a little bit of white and get some brighter colors out of this. All right, so that was the spirit white. Alrighty. So basically, the robe's color will be purple. So we got purple here. In my shadows, I'm going to have a mixture of the red, or the burgundy, with some purple. We're just trying to create a dark color and a little bit of black. So this makes a little bit more interesting color than if we just added black to the purple. It's like a warm shadow in there. I'll clean this off. Could you go get me a paper towel or
Sure thing.
5 of them? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. So we've got that. We also want a highlight color. So I'm going to grab some more of my purple and put it like maybe over here and add just a little bit of white to that. That will give me a nice kind of a highlighted color, but it's still very, very purple. In fact, maybe I'll add a little bit more purple to it. So one mistake that a lot of people make when doing highlights is they add too much white to it or too much of a lighter color. You want to actually keep as much saturated color as you can. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Your plethora of...
My plethora of paper towels. Do we have any questions yet?
Not yet. If y'all have questions, just post them in the Q&A box. It's at the very bottom of the screen when you move your mouse over it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait, we have one. Just
We do.
So Ken said, what is your favorite everyday brush for base coat? Thanks.
Good question. I've got these hobby brushes. Well, I used to have 2 hobby brushes on the... Oh, I do. Here they go. So we got one from Monument, one from AK. It's just a hobby brush. It's a nylon brush, huge. So these are the types of brushes I really like to use for just getting paint on a model. The reason for that is your nylon brushes will put paint down more evenly. And I usually paint, I don't thin my paints too much at first because I want to build up the color very quick. I want my colors to be vibrant. When you're dealing with like tabletop armies and like games like this, a lot of times our lighting isn't the best in the area that we're playing. So a much more vibrant color, a much more saturated color. When I say saturated, like something like this, it's very, very purple. It's like a pure purple. Same with like something like the molten orange. It's very, very orange. It doesn't have blacks or browns mixed into it or other colors to make it not as vibrant. A perfect example here is our Ninja Black, which is very purpley, but you can see this one's much more saturated than that one. And this one is much more saturated than that one. It's got way more color. It's more vibrant. Maybe not more saturated, but more vibrant. So when you're looking for colors that will pop on a tabletop, this one pops way more than that one. And then something like this orange right here would be somewhere right in the middle. So when you're choosing your colors, you can choose them that way. And using a more vibrant color will show up much better and be more attractive to the eye. You can definitely see it better in dark areas too. So, okay, we've got this. I'm going to start applying colors. So basically I have a shadow color here. I've got a highlight color, and I've got a mid-tone, which actually has some red in it. But we'll mix that all together, and then it will just be purple. Purple. I might put a little bit more purple on there. All right. So basically 3 colors. This doesn't mean that I won't mix maybe a 50-50 of my mid-tone and my shadow color, just to have another shade of color. I can also mix my mid-tone with my highlight color and get another shade of that color. But for right now, I just want to use those 3 colors, so it makes it easy for me. And so yeah. So I know that I'm going to have highlights up here because there's lots of white. I know I'm going to have shadows down here because it's black. So if I just started putting in color down here in these folds, putting my shadow color in there, and then come right back. I usually don't even clean my brush because there's not enough paint on there to really mess things up. I can just put in purple right next to it, put it in all these areas. I noticed that this is very dark right here, so let's grab some of my shadow color again, and I'm just going to paint it on right there. Nice shadows down here at the bottom. If I feel like I can always clean off my brush a little bit, if I don't want to impregnate my mid-tone color with too much shadow. If you go back and forth too much, it will actually start messing up your colors, blending them all together. But now I can just start putting this purple right up here, but see, I still got those shadows in there. So literally just using the base coat to tell me where to put the colors. This is very white right here, so I'm going to put straight up purple right there. It's darker down here in the corner, so I'm just going to put the dark color right there. Grab more of my purple where it comes back out to the white. This just makes life really, really easy for our initial steps of finding out where our highlights and shadows are supposed to go. Now, up on the top parts, we know that there's going to be highlights, like a brighter highlight up there. We've got our midtones right here. I'll put a little bit more right on here. But right up on the shoulder, it's going to be the brighter color. So I'm going to grab my lighter color of purple and paint it right at the top. And again, I'm not using a whole bunch of, I'm not really thinning my paints at all. I think they're just the right consistency. Put this across the top layers right there. Grab my midtone again because I'm doing the sides. Put them in right here. The reason I use a big jump between my colors, this purple is obviously darker than that purple, and that purple is obviously darker than this one, is because I want to be able to see it once I paint it on there. I want to see those dark shadows. I want to see the midtone, and I want to see the highlights. So we can just keep painting this area. I'm going to do, we will do these little folds right here. They're really big, so I'm going to put my highlight color on there. Just remember, you're probably going to have to hit these a couple times with each color. Even though they're not really thinned out, it still takes a couple passes to completely cover up what was underneath. So we'll do midtones right there, right here. And one thing that you'll find with your Zenithal Prime is that even though I'm putting a midtone in this sort of shadow area, whatever was under it will actually make that purple a little bit darker. So my underpainting of these shadow colors is helping me out even with my midtones and highlights. So you see all this black right here? That's a whole bunch of this shadow color right there. Bring it all the way up here. We'll put some in here. You don't have to be exactly perfect with this. Do midtones over some of those white areas. Just like this. Just continue putting all this midtone color on right here because it's very light. Now this is just the base coat, so you can adjust all these colors further, putting more shadows in the mid-tony areas and more highlights, whatever you want to do. But this is just getting you your base colors on. So don't worry too much about it having to be perfect. It just needs to be generally in the right spot. The other thing I like about a big brush is you can just really fill it full of paint and really slop it on there. Put a little bit of shadow color way over here. We got that. We'll do this side of the sleeve. I wanted it lighter on this side, so maybe we'll just do our mid-tone color on all these highlights over here. So it'll still be bright, but it'll be a little bit darker than the other side. And this is, this is basically how I start display models and gaming models. Like this model is actually for my own copy of Shadows of Brimstone. So it doesn't have to be a display level character because I don't have the time to do that, for one. But also when you're painting a lot of figures, you don't want to go too crazy. But I still base coat them all pretty much the same way. So I'm going to grab kind of our half and half, the mixture of 50% midtone and 50% shadow, because these areas right here are dark, but they're not as black as some of these other areas. So I'm going to do them a little bit lighter. They're still shadowy though. If it starts getting a little bit brighter in my base coat, I switch back to my midtone. This does take practice. The first few times you're going to do it, it might be a hot mess. But you just got to work at it. Until you start getting better at it. Do some of these highlights right here, or midtone. And then we need some sort of mid-tony shadowy colors down here where it kind of flips up on us. This is really actually a really good sculpt. I like it. Fun model to paint.
Mm-hmm.
Did you think so too, Liz?
I did. That's why I said, mm-hmm.
Now, as I roll around the model, I'm noticing there's parts where the Zenithal Prime is still showing through. I can hit those again, but I gotta wait till they dry completely, because if I start doing that now, I'm just gonna pick up paint. So I want to start doing this hat over here. And I know my light source is coming in right from here, basically. So let's go ahead and put sort of my highlight purple right in here. And then back to my midtone right in the front. And then we'll put this nice shadow color over here. Do this piece. All right, and then we got a little bit down here that I forgot to paint. So we'll do, it's way down low, so maybe we'll do like the 50-50 shadow midtone mix. Just to kind of keep it purple, but kind of a darkish purple. Put some over here. So there you have it. You still see it looks pretty rough. But you still see some of that Zenithal Prime showing through. So we've still got some ideas of where our shadows and highlights and everything will go. Let me blow dry this real quick with my airbrush. It'll be much quicker. If you have a blow dryer, that works too. All right. So just to give you kind of a close-up, see how bad this is. So you don't feel like you have to do this first step and it's perfect. You can see very blotchy, super blotchy back here. I actually missed some spots, but that's all okay. Blotchy down here because we'll put a second coat on and we'll start cleaning this up a little bit. Also, our highlight will hopefully start showing up more like a highlight. The highlight and the base coat almost looks the same right now because the mid-tone is like see-through through the white, so it's actually showing up as lighter. But we can start putting on a little bit more layers. Go down here. Do our mid-tone color. Might even put a little bit of this mid-tone color down lower because it will still appear dark. It'll kind of start bumping our color will be a little bit more saturated down here, even though it's dark. You notice I'm not grabbing big swaths of paint. I'm grabbing just the tip full and working my way down. Real light with my pressure. So I just leave an even coat of paint on there. Do this side. I almost feel like it's almost like I'm dry brushing. I'm that light with my touch. Come up here. So now you're starting to see this paint is actually starting to look more opaque, which is exactly what I want. And again, I'm not really thinning my paint at all right now. Not yet, at least. All right, so like that. Let's get up on this shoulder a little bit. So because this paint is a little bit see-through, in different colors, you got to kind of pay attention to your paints. Different colors like this purple are a little bit see-through, and since this is a little bit see-through, I'm banking on the fact that even though I'm putting it over these darker areas, it's actually letting some of that darkness show through, and so it stays a dark shadow. So you see here, we've still got darkness over here, and it's brighter over on this side. Now we'll start grabbing some of our highlight color, and we'll start seeing if we can make this a little bit more opaque up here. Again, I'm putting it on real softly so that paint just lays right on top. And I'm only putting it up in this highlight area up here, maybe the top of this fold. Just like that. There, it gets really light right down here, so maybe we'll put some of that highlight color right in there just to see what it looks like. I'll go back to my mid-tone. I want to get the front of this mask here, this hood. I'll do the back side. Again, trying to get our mid-tone color almost opaque. And then we'll grab our highlight color. Go right up the side of that mask. So I'm working quickly enough that maybe these colors are blending a little bit. I'm doing a little bit of wet blending right there. Okay, I need more back here. Put our highlights in these parts. Mid-tone in these parts. Mid-tone down here. So I'm just slowly but surely covering up all that area. If you had your paints thinned down even to skim milk, which a lot of people tell you to do, you're not going to have nearly as good of coverage. You're going to be doing this 3, 4, 5 times before it actually starts covering. And I ain't got time for that. I don't know about you, but I like to get my models painted. So Just don't thin it. Now, if you really need it to be thinned, go ahead and thin it. I mean, obviously, but if you can work it with thicker paints, your life's going to be a lot easier in the long run. All right, we do need some shadow color back here on the back side of this. Completely missed that before. Some more down in here. All right, a little bit more built up there. Still see brighter over here, darker over here, and that's what we want. It's actually looking pretty cool. I'm going to grab a little bit smaller brush. And we will put our 50-50. We'll make another 50-50 mix of our shadow color and midtone. And now I want to start grabbing, like, there we got big folds right here that probably need a little bit of shadow under them. So let's put that back in. So we got that right there. One right here, put one right there. May even need to do that a couple of times, but I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to grab my normal shadow color. I'm going to start with a little bit of dark lining. So dark lining is putting a really dark color in between objects. So I'm just going to put it around his cool hat helmet.
While you're doing your dark lining,
yeah.
Ken asked, are you drying your brush after rinsing or working it a bit wet?
I do wipe it off. You got to be real careful when you rinse your brush out because it will hold a bunch of water even when you wipe it off. So you don't want it too wet because that will actually start making your paint thin out without your permission. So if you wonder why your paint's so thin, it's probably because your brush... You rinsed your brush out and then went right back into your paint pot or your paint well and put a whole bunch of water back in there. So you got to be careful with that. So I'm definitely, like, a lot of times I will grab my towel and just crimp it like that, and that gets most of that out. You want your brush a little bit moist because obviously that helps you paint, but not too much. All right. So now my highlights definitely got to pump up more. So the color I mixed for my highlight is not contrasting. It's not showing up well enough against my midtone color. So sometimes that happens. You mix it. You gotta do some tests, right? So I'm gonna mix in a little bit more white. What I'm trying to do though is trying to keep this purple still very purple. I don't want it to look like. Let me mix up one that's way too light. I don't want it to look like that. I want it more purple, but I do need it lighter because it's just not showing up. So we'll mix this up really good. Wash out my brush. And again, I'm grabbing small amounts off the corners. I'm not just swooping in and grabbing a whole bunch. And we will start adding a little bit. And to build up highlights, a lot of times I tell people just do little lines. It's much easier than trying to just do a straight line. So maybe like this. Think of it almost like dry brushing, but you're using wet paint and you're just making tiny little lines. And you should do so many of them that you really can't see the lines anymore. Just kind of building that up. On areas like his sleeves here, you might actually have to draw right on top of those folds. So I'm going to start putting some of these highlights in. I'm kind of going on obvious places, like folds that are raised up towards my light source. So like this, up on this shoulder. Over onto these little folds back here. These folds over here. Right now I'm just trying to hit the tops of the folds. Here in a second, we might change that up a little bit. So for now, you can just draw like little straight lines on things. If you're a beginner painter, this is probably as far as you'll get. If you're more advanced, you're probably going to want to start blending and stuff, but we don't even need to start blending just yet. We're just kind of putting in our color values and stuff, making sure that we can see the highlights. See, now I'm starting to actually be able to see those highlights, so that's a good sign.
Shaken said, wet dry brushing, the next big thing.
Yeah. It is a thing. Your brush pressure matters. It matters a lot. I never knew that for like 15 years. And now I'm starting to realize that's a big deal. It puts different amounts of paint down. So you can actually have very thick paint on your brush and just put a very small amount down. And it doesn't look like thick paint. It just looks like a nice opaque highlight. All right, so just trying to get in some of these highlights right here. I'm going to reapply up here on the head. Insisting on that color. We're trying to make it more and more opaque. So sometimes you have to come over and do the same color a couple times in the same spot. Otherwise, it's still a little bit see-through. This is another reason why if you're using really thinned out paints, it's going to take you forever to build up these highlights. And I'm of the belief that the more times I touch a model, it's more opportunities for me to mess it up. So if I only do like a couple, 3 brush strokes in each area, that's much better. We've got a couple little folds back here. Just paint lines right on the top of those folds. I think that looks pretty cool. This highlight's still not bright enough, but that's okay for right now. We will deal with that highlight later.
Oh, yeah.
Ain't playing no games. Sometimes it's important as a painter to watch your highlights and shadows build in color, just so you understand them a little bit better. When you get better at it, you can skip a couple steps and jump right into the good stuff, like making it really pop. But for now, we're gonna keep building up this. He's got a cute little nose here. Maybe we'll highlight that a little bit. There's some rips in his helmet here. His hood. His cape hood helmet.
We can call it a helmet.
It's the official.
Actually, I think you called...
He's Dark Helmet hat from Spaceballs. No.
No, there was another hat in, I guess, another class that I kept calling a helmet.
Yeah.
It was just like a beanie or something.
Right. It was like something like that. But whatever. It is what it is. So I've mixed up another highlight color. I've grabbed some of my midtone, put it in my highlight, and I'm trying to get a little bit darker color because I want to highlight this side, and this side's already kind of darker. So I don't want it super bright. So hitting the tops of those folds. Hit over here. So I try to hit everything that's obvious. Anything that's pointed up. Maybe I'll put some of these down lower on this side because this side is getting progressively darker as it goes down the body. So the reason for having our light source be maybe darker at the bottom and a little bit brighter at the top, it's not really realistic, but what it does is it starts driving your focus up this way. So when things are really dark, our eyes, it's uninteresting to us, and our eyes are always looking for the brighter parts of the model. So with this one, it's progressively brighter as it comes up, but then it's also progressively brighter as it goes over. All right, so I'm going to grab a little bit more of my Uber highlight up here. Put some more up on top of this helmet, hat. A little bit more over here. his cheek. Starting to build up some of those highlights. They're starting to look a little bit better. Very nice. Now, depending on how shiny you want his robe, you could keep going lighter and lighter, almost to white, and then you'd have something that looked a little bit like silk robes. Maybe this guy's, he's kind of a pimp. He's kind of a baller. He's got them silk robes going. But then maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's just a regular bad guy, and he's got sort of dirty, dingy robes, so you don't want to go too bright with your highlights. But for this, I think we'll go a little bit brighter here, just so we can see these highlights a little bit better. So you can always do washes or glazes and knock this color back down, so it's not the end of the world if it's too light at the end. I'm just kind of putting these highlights, grabbing very small amounts of paint, and I start in the area where I want the highlight the brightest and move it along maybe the edge of this. And I'm hoping that my paint just kind of runs out. If it doesn't, I can always wipe some off on my finger and just continue on. But with any luck, you start up here, and then when you pull your brush down, it just sort of runs out. Perfect. Some of these down here. We'll do some little edge highlights. Edge highlights is when you just you can flatten out your brush a little bit and use the side of your brush to kind of hit that edge. So little things like that. All right. So very quickly, we've gotten some shadows, midtones, and highlights on this model. It's already starting to look halfway decent. We haven't really put very much time at all into it. In fact, I think I've talked more than I've painted.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty normal.
That is totally normal.
You even have coffee here that you haven't drank.
I know. Don't want to get hit up by the coffee police.
That's me.
Yeah. All right, so putting a little bit more highlights on this side. Again, I'm using a little bit my darker mixture of color over here. My darker highlight. When this comes out a little bit, I can always bring in a couple of these highlights a little bit brighter down low. Pick out some of these details. This guy has a lot of rips and stuff in his clothing, so you can always accentuate those a little bit more, which is really nice. Put a nice highlight right there. So I used this highlight right here was actually the color that I'm using to highlight up here. So it's fairly dark down here, so I figure it will show up okay. But I don't want to use my really bright highlight because that would look funny. So it always pays to have several versions of your color mixed up on your palette. It's one of the reasons I use a wet palette, because that paint will stay wet for longer. I use parchment paper because it doesn't let water through. So it just stays I don't know how to explain it. It's hydrated. It doesn't dry out as quick, but it also doesn't just let water in all the time, because then I would just have a soupy mess in here. So it's really nice using the parchment paper for that. A lot of the wet palette papers that come with wet palettes actually lets water through. So you got to be careful. Careful what you're dealing with.
And remember, if y'all have questions, don't hesitate to ask them.
Yeah. Or if
He
you have any
likes
answers.
He
Yeah.
loves answering questions.
Especially on stuff I don't know. I'll just make stuff up.
Oh my gosh.
Just kidding.
I'll do that.
Just kidding. So now I'm kind of slowing down a little bit more and pulling out some specific details, like where these folds, the edges of these folds, maybe putting little marks in there. I think that this would be a really good area for a highlight right here. You can almost see where the plastic changes, it changes course. The plane is different. So I'm going to make a really small highlight right here. Right across that. All right, question. Hit it.
Yes. Do you use just standard kitchen parchment paper?
Yeah.
And what is your preferred wet palette?
Right now, actually, I'm using this one that I can't remember the name of.
It's Game Envy.
Game Envy's.
New one. It is the Exemplar wet palette.
Exemplar wet palette. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I love it because it's black, like my soul.
It is. Yeah. They have different colors.
Yeah, you got a bunch of different colors. Yeah. I mean, you could use, for years, Liz and I have both used Mastersons.
I still use a Masterson because I wasn't fancy enough to get the Exemplar yet.
We're gonna get her one.
Yeah. The Masterson palette works great. Just throw away the parchment or throw away the paper that you get with it.
Yeah, it's
and use parchment.
Unless for some reason you really like it, like our business partner over at or our other artist over at Miniature Monthly. Matt DiPietro, he loves the palette paper that comes with it. So it is what it is. So I made like a little highlight on that little crease right there because I think, so you always have a secondary light coming in. We've got our first light over on this side, secondary light on that side. So with how bright that is, I think I can move my highlight down further on this side. So I'm always like regulating. I'm always checking what one side looks like. Obviously the front needs to be brighter than the back. So we'll do much bolder highlight right here. This hat is curving, so sometimes on a curved object the highlight is not at the top, it's like right around the middle-ish area. Not always, but sometimes. I'm just kind of stippling in highlights. So stippling is just sort of dotting it in. Again, I'm not using a ton of paint on my brush, so I don't end up unloading a whole bunch of paint onto the model.
I'm just going to interject real quick with just one tidbit of information about wet palettes. So Ken mentioned that he's tired of the mold in his Masterson wet palette. Always let your wet palette dry overnight. Don't
In between sessions, yeah. For sure.
Just throw away the palette paper that has the paint on it, because chances are the paint's going to already separate before you get to use it again the next day, and that's how your sponge will mold. So if you just leave it open, it doesn't mold.
Yeah.
Unless you live in like your house is just super damp, then
it might not, but I mean it may still mold just as fast. Like in San Diego, wet palettes would mold overnight. Like it just was like nasty. And so that's always really disgusting, and I don't recommend it at all. So, if you're worried about, I mixed a color, I don't know how to mix it again, that's a good opportunity to force you to learn how to mix your colors and remember what your mixture was.
Yep. So, long story short, leave the top off of the Masterson palette, let it dry overnight, and then rehydrate it the next day and put new paper down.
Yep. I have not had a moldy palette in a long time. What about you, Liz?
I have. Not my Masterson one, though.
Oh, the other one that was supposed to never mold?
Yeah, I forgot what... forgot what company
it was the first company, Redgrass or whatever.
Yeah, that one. That one molded a lot. I think I finally threw it away, because every time I use it, it would mold.
Yeah.
Whether the lid was on it or not.
So even if they say it's non-molding, it will mold. Like mold will grow on anything. So
yeah,
just is what it is. All right, so just building up those highlights a little bit more. We'll go maybe pull some of these highlights further down. This. Make that a little bit brighter down there. Very cool. Okay. Highlights are always a back and forth thing. that. A bit brighter right here. Put some more highlights on these parts that are raised back up. Just like that. These areas a little bit more highlighted. So another thing that will always look weird as you're going is you need to paint other areas of your model, because if you don't, this white stuff showing through, the white and black always kind of throws you off as to how the rest of the model is coming together. So definitely make sure that you do extra areas, or I usually highlight base coat everything at once. So I'll get the whole model base coated with this initial base coat, and then I start going back in and re-highlighting areas and making them better. Getting more definition and stuff and things. Go like that. Again, I'm kind of waiting to see if something happens when I put the paint on. So if it doesn't, maybe I grab a little bit lighter paint or darker paint, you know, if I'm doing a shadow. Some right in here. There's lots of little holes in this guy, so you can just kind of work your way around and get all the little cracks and crevices. Highlights on clothing and fabric and stuff generally start at the top. Except for an area like this where it's kind of curved, but generally they start at the top, so that your final highlights will be at like tops of these folds right there, top of this one, you know, that type of thing, top of these. Typically you want your final highlights to be fairly small. It's looking pretty cool. Let's get some lighter highlights over here. Right on the edge here. Maybe this one will kind of move down a little bit. All right. So our highlights up here are kind of a little bit brutal. They're a little bit too dark now for the top of the shirt. So I'm going to mix up kind of a 50-50 of our highlight color and our mid-tone color. And we're just going to kind of fill in these highlights right here. Now this is something that, like, maybe if you're more experienced, you're going to fill that in earlier on in the paint job, because you know that you're eventually going to need this all to be a lighter color. So I'm just going to keep mixing in my lighter highlight till I get the paint color that I want up here. So basically what used to be a highlight color is now my mid-tone color. And that will give me a really bright area up here on top. Make the robes look much lighter. I think I also want this to be a little bit further out on this side. So again, just doing my little streaks. Do it again. Reload my brush. Do some more little streaks. I don't know why, but the streaks just seem like they work the best. Okay.
All right.
I think Liz has a question now.
No.
No, somebody else.
All right. So Ken says, well, So it's not pertaining to the subject.
Okay, that's fine. Ask it anyways.
Ask it anyways?
Yeah.
Okay. What exactly do you use to mold your bases on the, like the Forbidden Fortress models that are pictured on the boxes?
I sculpted those. So I sculpted them with Abe's Epoxy Sculpt, which is a really good, it's probably the least expensive putty you can get. I don't use it because of that, but it works really, really well. And lately, I've been sculpting them in 3D because I learned over COVID, I taught myself how to sculpt in 3D, which was not easy. And, well, I taught myself. I watched a lot of YouTube videos and I joined a couple Patreons to learn how to sculpt. That's what I did. But it was very difficult, but I learned how to do it. And I've been doing bases for like Targa Plateau. I've got some for Forbidden Fortress, stuff like that. So it's been a lot of fun. But it's fun making, custom bases for things because it's just very unique to the models. And I try to, add in a lot of bits and bobs from the actual map tiles and stuff, so that it looks like these models are actually from the game, which they are. But I mean, their bases are also from the game.
For the Aves, do you remember if it was the natural or the?
It is natural. I like the natural a lot. Natural or gray. I think they do have a gray one, but the natural one seems like what everybody uses.
Okay.
They have several colors. Don't get any of the other colors. It's just easiest to see the natural.
Good.
All right. So you see where I brought up the tones right here? It looks a lot more natural where the sleeves are, where the folds are. And it looks brighter. Look at this. There we go. That looks pretty cool. So for a very, very short amount of time, I think that looks pretty awesome. Getting those highlights in. And that's with using my Zenithal Prime. So now if I want to do some other colors, I like to do... Scott talked about my ethereal glow on the Odakuru. So I've got a couple models that we worked on the metallics thing the other night. And let's see about putting a little bit of a glow down there. So I'm going to use... Do I have it? I'm going to use a Reaper color for this. It's called Phantom Glow. It's actually the same color I used for the Odakuru. To give him his ethereal looking glow there. It's a very vibrant bluish teal. I'm also going to use the Sotek green from Citadel. That's a little bit more teal colored, darker teal.
Say spectral glow. Is that
So
I'm sorry.
Phantom Glow.
Phantom.
Phantom Glow and Sotek green.
Getting links.
Getting it. So we're gonna take this color and so this is a lot of times I'll do what's called a kicker color. So a kicker color is typically a color on the opposite side of the color wheel from the color you're using. So if we were to take, this is the color wheel that I use. It's called the Real Color Wheel. You can just look it up online and print it out. It looks just like this. There's a whole bunch of them. So if I'm looking, the thing I like about this is I can look at this color and go, where on this color wheel do I think this color actually is? Maybe it's way over here. Maybe it's right there. I don't know. So it's nice being able to grab a color like this, and then this one is somewhere in here. So I've got almost all my colors here. Whereas if you go to like Michael's or something, they have the primary and the secondary colors, but there's nothing in between. So you can't really, it's really hard to find the actual colors. Now on this color wheel, it's nice because it has the contrasting color right here in the middle. So if we're looking at an orangish red, the contrasting color for that is actually a bluish teal, not green. So I don't know if that's a mind blower right there, but red's contrast is blue-ish teal. As you get closer to magenta, that's when you start getting into the green. So have you ever noticed if you put green as a shadow of red, you get this weird brownish color and it doesn't look very good. And for the longest time, I thought the color wheel was just full of it because it never worked. It never worked. Those contrasting colors that normally people say red and green, it's actually almost purple and green. And then as you get into deeper purples, it's actually lime green. So that's why a lime green color looks great with purple. So that being said, if we're using teal on our model, a good contrasting color would be warm red, so an orangish red. Same with blue is still orange. So that color theory is solid. Blue is orange. Yellow does go into purple, but it's a very bluish purple. So you just got to be careful with what your tones are and what colors you pick from the opposite side are, because it matters. It definitely matters. So that being said, another example, if you're painting orcs, you've got an olive drab color for your orc skin. Guess what? That one's purple. Even a little bit greener orcs are still sort of an olive drab, purple or magenta. So you can mix magenta into an olive drab color and it'll make the best shadow color you've ever seen for an orc. So just keep that in mind. All right. So we've got these guys right here. We do have red up here, and this red is, it started off as a warm red. It might be a little bit cooler now, but what if I wanted to put some teal in there? Do I have the color?
What?
I don't have the one color that I wanted to have, but I don't even know where it is. Okay, so we'll just make it. So we've got a little bit of teal right here on our palette. I was going to use the tentacle blue from the Shadows paint set, but I don't have it in front of me, so we're not going to use that. So I've got some teal here. I do have red in this paint scheme, so I could put some teal elements around it. And I've actually already got a little bit of ethereal blue up there. So maybe my ethereal blue could be the teal, but also maybe just teal could be the teal. So I'm going to grab a little bit of black. I'm going to mix that. So I'm making a darker version of the teal. And maybe we'll put that in on his shield. And then I'm going to take a second color and just wipe it away.
Brush, not color.
Yeah, brush. That's what I meant.
I'm going to take this second color right here and wipe paint away.
Yep, that's exactly how it
Wow.
works. I don't know what's going on. All right, so I'm going to grab a little bit more of that, and we're going to put it more on this part of the shield. Sometimes I wipe away all of it, and it just leaves a little bit of paint left. Again, I didn't thin that paint at all, so it leaves a little bit of a stain. And we'll put a little bit up here. Wipe it away with my second brush. Oops. And that starts adding a little bit of these other colors that like that color. So I'm going to grab one of my other reds. I'm going to get some more of that warm red on my palette. So this may seem like a very foreign concept to you at first, but the more you do it, the better you get at it, and you start seeing the colors that really work well together. It doesn't always have to be a contrasting color. It doesn't always have to be the other side of the color wheel. Some colors just look great together. Purple and orange, which I always thought was a horrible color combination. If done correctly, it looks fantastic. So I'm bumping up my red to be a little bit more vibrant, which may be kind of weird because these are skeletons. They were just underground, but maybe he's just got the reddest bandana in the block. And that starts playing with my bluish tones down here. Now the other thing I can do is I want to have like a little bit of that ethereal glow. These guys are skeletons that are alive. So, I mean, come on. They're obviously there's something fishy going on. There's some sort of magic happening. So maybe we put a little bit of this teal, the phantom glow, on the bottom side of his arms. We can put that on the bottom side of his gloves, which are like a dark brown. Let me get in a little bit closer. See that I'm just starting to put in a little bit of that spectral glow there. Maybe we'll get a little bit more of this teal color. For these darker things, I'm going to start with a little bit darker color and then put the other color on top of it. So we'll put these along here, up into here. Maybe it's on the bottom side of this shovel there. Now I'm putting the phantom glow underneath. That looks cool. Let's put it on the bottom side of this, on his shield. So everything's affected by the dark energies that are reanimating this guy. I'm just picking out all the bottom edges of stuff over here. I mean, technically this ethereal glow could be anywhere, but I just wanted to sort of accent the rest of the model. I'm going to do a little bit up in his eyes. But again, I'm kind of trying to do the undersides of these eye sockets. Bottom of his teeth. Maybe a little bit up into there. I'm not seeing it real well on my shovel, so I'm just going to come back to this. Hit it again. And again, I didn't want this really like glowing. It's like a vapor coming off the edges of things. So it's not like super, it's not going to have a big teal glow down here. It's just going to be on the edges of things. His feet, maybe his feet have a little bit. Sometimes you got to put it on and then put it on again. Like take a look from the front. If you can't see it, like I see it on that toe really well. So I want it to be on the other toes too. Maybe kind of put a edge highlight down here, or a low light, I guess it would be called. And then come back in and sort of dab so that it looks like it's uneven. That actually looks pretty cool. We'll go up the side of the leg here. Got to be careful not to overdo it. So we'll just put it in spots. Maybe we'll skip spots too. Only go on one side of the leg and not the other. Get a little bit more of that spectral glow in there. Put some on this foot over here. Leg. Maybe I'll just sort of dot it in. It kind of just dissipates. Gotta tell you, my Coffin Breakers are gonna look cool when I'm done with them. Mm-hmm. I'm excited.
Can't see. There we go.
Yeah.
I know you were trying to, but
yeah, it was. Sometimes the camera gods work against you.
Yeah.
Put a little bit up here.
So cool.
Very cool. So I want to accentuate maybe the sides of his skull up here. So we'll bring it in along the bottom side of his cranium up here. Again, sometimes you put it on and you just don't see it very well. So come back in, hit it again. Again, that whole insisting on color, painting the same color over and over again until it shows up. That's starting to show up much better. Maybe like a little bit on the bottom side of his bandana and shirt. I'm going to pull my light better. And we'll do the underside of his ribs, a couple of the ribs maybe. Oh, he's got a cool holster. I don't know if it's cool. Maybe it's dastardly. Dastardly holster. Just going to dot those in. Dot that in. Some stuff down there. Let's do the butt. So I think I've wiped off plenty of paint off my brush, so I can kind of come in and just sort of hit the sides of the ribs right there. His little chicken wing bone back there. We'll do these things. His clothes in the back. Oh, his holster will look, or his belt will look cool with it. I kind of went outside the lines there, but I think if I put a little bit of green glow right here, some teal glow, that will look cool too. And my mistake turns into, I meant to do that. Do the bottoms of those feet, bottoms of the pants, right there. Again, it doesn't have to go everywhere, but I mean, if you want it to go everywhere, that's fine too. It's kind of just, where is your ethereal glow going? Who does number 2 work for? Something like that. All right. So do this. Couple little bit on the feet. So it looks like there's a little glow going on down there. Sometimes I put this way down in the shadows, so it actually, instead of a shadow, it's just bright teal. I'll put this up here.
Oh, almost off screen.
Gotcha. So again, you see the first layer, not so hot. Second layer, it's getting a little bit better. Go back in here. Maybe kind of dotting it in. Very cool. Now you find one of the reasons this color actually shows up is because it's very saturated. It's a light color, it's a bright color, but it's also very saturated with those blues and greens. So it actually shows up in small amounts. If you were using something that was much more desaturated, you know, maybe had a bunch of white in it, or it was just a color that was really light, like that, it's not going to show up nearly as well. You need that saturated color to show up in the dark, basically. Come back in and kind of do some dotting on these edge highlights to kind of make them pop a little bit more. Basically, I'm going outside the lines in very small areas to make it look like it's glowing. Pop that. This one. Okay, I want some more on the shield. There goes my calendar. I've had private coachings all day long today, and we actually had to cancel a couple for this class because we forgot to not leave time slots open. But it's a great time to say I do private coachings. If you go to miniaturemonthly.com. Okay, so see how that's starting to look much brighter? That looks freaking fantastic. I love that. So I'm kind of putting big blobs of paint on there. And that's why it's showing up. So I'm putting a big blob of paint in a small area. I kind of want to do a whole army that's like ethereal glow like this.
You should.
I should.
You should paint
1,000 coffin breakers.
All of our coffin breakers.
The coffin breakers, well, obviously they're going to look like this because these are our coffin breakers to begin with. But
well, we have one that's...
It's too bad we've only got 2 that have gotten this far in the painting process, but...
That's all right. You teach a few more classes.
Yeah. Yeah. Who wants another coffin breaker class? Go start to finish. For a whole squad.
Yeah. So
a lot of times the time frame I give myself is I'll, like during football season, I'll do 1 unit on a Sunday. So I'll be like, Sunday is my day to paint for myself. And while I'm watching football, or more often than not, I'm listening to football while I paint. And I will literally, I'm like, I have to have this squad needs to be done by the end of the day. And whatever they look like at the end of the day is what they're done as. So it teaches me to go fast. But I still want them to look cool. You know, this is for our game. I don't want Liz mocking me when we're playing. You know,
is that what's going to happen?
Probably not, but...
Who painted these trash
Who painted this
models?
is trash.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to say. Well, we got one person. Court said that she would be down for... Or they would be down
the
for...
Coffin Breaker Lollapalooza.
We could always do like a... I don't know. Hangout one Sunday.
We could.
And paint.
It'd be a miniature monthly Shadows of Brimstone.
Mm-hmm.
Coffin Breaker Palooza.
Yeah.
We should do it like in a couple, like 3 weeks, because that gives time for people to get their Coffin Breakers in.
Mm-hmm.
Because that would kind of stink if you're just watching me and you're like, gosh, I really wish I had my Coffin Breakers. It's gonna.
Cool that looks.
It does. It looks pretty rad. So you see what that adds to a paint job. Just putting that little bit of color in there. There's no reason on earth why this color should be here, but it makes it look cool. All right, we'll do a little bit more up in the face. A little bit right there. How are we doing time-wise?
It is 9:18.
What does that mean to me? That means that we need to get...
We've been going for an hour and 20 minutes.
We have. Very cool.
So.
All right. So technically, I could do the same thing with this guy. I could start having some of these teal undertones come in, which would be awesome. Or I could do... So we said the contrasting color to this is that sort of lime green. What if I grab a couple green shades here, just to show you real quick how these colors will go together. So what's a great place to put this green? Maybe I don't want to put that down in the shadows of this guy, because that would, I don't know, just to me it seems kind of weird, right? So what if I do...
Are you using library?
No.
Oh.
I'm using...
What?
What? I'm using Reaper's Alien Goo and Reaper's Clear Green. Those 2 colors. So this guy, contrasting color, lime green. Where do we put it? He's got a bunch of tentacles. So I'm going to put this in. Green is a notoriously see-through color, so it will play well with our Zenithal Prime. I can also put some of this alien goo here at the top as my highlight. I'm putting it right over the wet green paint. And it kind of just makes it brighter. This is like the most fantastic color combination right here. Purple and lime green. Just gorgeous. I think one, because purple's a very good color by itself. I hate green, but it looks great in this combination. So I like it. Much to my chagrin. Get some right there. Need that to blend a little bit better. So here's another thing you can't do when your paints are all thinned out. You definitely can't wet blend. It's much harder. I mean, you could to an extent, but you're not going to get the same results. I am a big wet blender, and I like when my colors blend very easily. Let's put some right there. And I like really bold colors. So even when I'm being dark and gritty, I like big bold colors. See that green looks great against the purple. Like that. And we'll grab some of our alien goo. Put it up here. Put it up there. And what if we were like, hey, I want him to have big green glowing eyes. Maybe we even just fill his eye sockets with the brightest alien goo. Just like that. Let's make sure that those sockets are completely filled with paint. Just like that. Super bright, sketchy. Let's see if I can't run some goo in this crack in his helmet. I think when I did the studio version of this guy, he just had black eyes. They were black, dark, evil eyes. We'll just put a couple little scratches up in there. You should. It's somewhere. It's in one of my galleries.
Do you remember what it is?
That was a long time ago. That was like 5 or 6 years ago. So he'd be in the Shadows of Brimstone gallery, but he would be probably in the first or second groups of models that I posted there. So just adding that green really, really pops with that model. So that's another good thing to remember when you're doing color schemes. Also, this green really draws your attention to the top of the model. So another reason to do that. All right, so that's kind of doing highlights and shadows and using kicker colors in your shadows. One other color that works really well in shadows is a dark blue or dark teal. So I've kind of made a dark teal right here. I'm going to make it even darker with a little bit more black. Again, the Shadows Tentacle blue, I believe it is, would totally work as well. I just don't know where I put mine. So blue is like a recessive color, and in our eyes, it makes things look further away or darker. So you can actually put blue down into these shadows. It's dark bluish teal.
They were black eye sockets, by the way. I found the photo.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I think that's what when I paint the studio models, I'm working off of art that Flying Frog gives me. So I need to make it the colors that they ask for. I do have a little bit of leeway, like on the Odakuru, I added the blue, but it's within reason, right? So there's a little bit of that dark blue right in here. That looks pretty cool. All of your shadows doesn't need to be that, just some of them. Maybe the deepest, darkest ones. I do it a lot under armpits and stuff.
I don't know why I laughed at that.
Because
It's funny.
armpits are funny.
Fair.
Let's make this side of the helmet darker. So I'm going to use this bluish black back there. Put it in. Use my second brush to kind of feather the edge. I'll flip this around, do the other side. We'll feather that edge. Now we've got that shadow much darker. I think now that that shadow's darker, I would definitely want this area darker. Get something like that. Definitely deeper, darker, more dastardly. And you'll find that, oh, well, I find it's way more fun painting with more colors. So just doing dark purple to light purple is not that exciting. But when you start adding these other colors in there and you see how they affect the dark purple or the purple, it makes it a lot more fun to paint. You feel like an artist. I mean, even sometimes I feel like an artist, and that is amazing. I'm not an artist.
You are an artist.
I'm part artist, part walrus.
Well, that's
debatable. Maybe mostly at walrus.
Yeah.
I'm a bull in a china shop. That's what Liz calls me.
No, you're a little hurricane.
Yeah, that too. So I'm always putting paint on, feathering it out a little bit just to see what, to smooth it in a little bit better. And we'll put a little bit of this darkness right around the face here. That looks pretty cool. Gives me a little bit more shadows in there. You can also thin out this paint a little bit, our dark bluish black, and use it to kind of dark line between some of these tentacles. Give us some more definition. The more you can use colors throughout your paint job, the more cohesive it will look and the better it will look. So that looks pretty cool. We'll do, this is going to bug me, so let's just paint that tentacle green. It's funny, my OCD comes out in certain areas. Sometimes I just don't care, and other times I'm like, I gotta paint that. So the ones on this side I don't care as much about, but that one definitely needed to get a little bit of paint on it. We'll go a little bit brighter with the highlight. Again, just painting it right on top of the wet paint, and it blends right in. Perfect. Let's put a couple highlights up here. I actually really love doing these tutorials. It's too bad they didn't have more DiceFest going, because I use it as an opportunity to paint my own stuff, because I don't get a lot of chances to paint my own stuff. And I actually really love the game. The game's super fun. So being able to teach you something and paint my own stuff is like a double bonus. So we got that on there. So again, this is a rough paint job. We've just been real quick getting colors on, but and obviously if I wanted to blend this some more, I could start doing glazes and stuff and blending things together. I can push my highlights a little bit higher, my shadows maybe a little bit deeper, but otherwise this is basically how I get, those first initial highlights and shadows on my model using that Zenithal Prime as my guide. Now, here is the, whoa. Way too zoomed in. This is what we worked on the other day, on Friday. So, kind of worked on getting both sides of my copper, the same amount of verdigris and stuff. That's looking pretty cool. Our experiment to paint the inside with contrast paints didn't work very well. So, this is actually what I wanted to do. So basically I painted the inside white. This looks horrible. White doesn't cover very well, but it got me to a point where I could put some orange over it. So I used our shadows molten orange, put a couple layers on. It's not perfect, but it's getting there. And then I'm going to I'm going to airbrush some more orange on this. So what I want to have happen is, this is a giant teleporter chamber or whatever. And I want to have some of that orange glowing out over the rest of the models. So let me actually... This is going to drive me crazy, so I'm just going to fix it right now. There's a little bit of white showing through right there. Put it right there. It's the part that...
That's the one part that was bugging you?
Yes. I would thank you for not laughing at me.
I almost did.
So
yep.
There you go. All right.
Bless it.
Putting some paint in there. I've got my... Oh, man. Is that cold?
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Well, I kept telling you to drink your coffee.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drops of thinner to all this paint. So in my airbrush, I make my paint as thick as it will go out of my airbrush. So I want as much of this good, gooey pigment not thinned out. So I put just a little bit of thinner in there. I'll do my test. It's a little bit too thick. My paint's not going through the bristles, so I'm going to put a little bit more thinner. 1, 2. Buckle my shoe.
That looks like the color of those pumpkins.
Color of rainbows.
Is it pumpkins?
Something like that. All right. So this time the paint is cutting through my cup or my bristles. So that's perfect. That might be too thin now. Gosh, I went the other way. All right. So I'll put some of this in my airbrush. This airbrush is the Vex. It's from Reaper Miniatures. I helped design it. So obviously it's the best airbrush in the world. But I do actually really like it. I'm the type of person, even if I made a product, if I don't like using it, I don't use it. So I've used my Vex for about 3 years now, nonstop. All right, so we got that. So I've painted some on by hand, and then I'm going to use my airbrush to kind of spray a little bit more down here, and hopefully like kind of make it a little bit more even. I could have done this from the very start. The problem is I'm going to have way more overspray. So I kind of put it in by hand, so I wouldn't overspray too much. Because when I do overspray, I want to overspray exactly where I want to overspray like I overspray. That's it.
Overspray with purpose.
Yes. And there's going to be a lot of highlights in here eventually, so I'm not too worried about it being totally perfect. All right. So, here we go. I'm going to spray on my finger a little bit just to see what the tone of the color is. And then we will start. This glow will come out and hit the back sides of this statue. So I'm going to see if I can't get a faint glow going on the statue. I don't know if you can see that very well. It's just a little bit of orange. I'm trying to spray from angles to make it look like the light's coming out from here and going out this way. So it's kind of going sideways, hitting the statue. We're going to do the flooring down here. Just a little bit of orange glow on the floor. Maybe we'll go out really far in front because the main glow part will be right in the center. So it's kind of glowing out this way. And it will look cool if this glow kind of cascades down the stairs. So it doesn't always have to be exactly realistic. So obviously you want to have everything painted before you do this. Otherwise you're going to paint back over it. It's not going to look very good. I'm going to hit the sides of this gold too. So even though technically it's not gold, orange, even though technically the glow isn't, it cannot physically hit the inside part here. Always remember when you're at a stoplight at night, the green glow or the red glow from the lights goes out into space. It is actually reflecting off of the atmosphere. So there technically could be orange glow all around this that's actually making everything orange. So I always put a little bit of glow on the areas even around it that can't be hit by the light, because this makes that atmospheric glow. Also, it looks kind of cool. So I'm gonna work this around. And I'm building up slowly because I don't want to go too fast. I don't want it too orange. I don't want to ruin all my metallics and stuff. But this is starting to soften up. It's starting to look better. Put some more in the centers here. All around here. Maybe I'll do a little bit more right at the base of this gate. So I gotta be honest, I just picked this up at at Gen Con. We haven't even played with this gate yet, so I don't even know what it does. Let's grab some more of this orange. I'm gonna do a little bit brighter shade of orange here. Like it's more yellowy. And what I can start doing now is putting some little orange highlights on here. So this is, oops, let's not break our Coffin Breakers here. I want to do edge highlights on these metal pieces. Metal is shiny, so it's obviously going to reflect really well.
And yes, Ken, he is still spraying at 40 psi.
Yeah, it's all 40 psi. I'm crazy.
Yeah. That looks like Cheeto dust.
It paints like, it smells like Cheeto dust too, and it paints like it. Maybe not. So if you put straight lines on all your metal, it will look very shiny. If you put dotted lines, it makes it look like the metal is very jaggedy. So just kind of getting some of these highlights on. Maybe I'll only do, what time is it?
What time is it? It's 9:38.
Okay. I'm just going to do this one side, which stinks because then I'll have to do, I wanted to get it all done. But I'll just do one side because otherwise we'll be here for a while.
Yeah.
So.
And we gotta make the,
we gotta make the quota, or.
No, I was going to say we gotta make sure that we are done in time for the.
Oh, I need to do my Discord video, my Discord review for our airbrushing class, and I've also got another private coaching. This is a busy Sunday, let me tell you. It's an awesome Sunday. I'd rather be busy than not busy.
Flying Frog will be doing a live hangout in about.
Oh yeah, we don't want to jump into that.
50 minutes. So we don't want
to impede on their super rad hangout. That was fun. Did anybody watch the concert last night? We did. We watched it in bed. It was awesome. You can actually do DiceFest from bed too. It's very cool. That's the one really cool thing about these online conventions. You can do it in your pajamas, in your underwear, whatever you want. Doesn't matter. Yep. So I'm going to add a couple little scratches too with this. I'm just going to put some of this brighter color right in the middle. Move it outwards. The tops of some of these things. Doesn't have to be perfect. Basically, the rule of thumb is if you go really fast, it's not going to be as good. If you go really slow, it may still not be as good, but you have a better chance of making a better model. So slow it down a little bit. You can do a little bit better job. But we are all about speed right now. See how we're starting to work these little pinwheels out? This is a really cool model, I must say.
Agreed.
Little things like that. Let's get right over here a little bit more. Then we'll tie this all in with another airbrush. Do a couple little ones out here. This is me when I'm commission painting. Faster, faster. Except for the studio stuff. Then I go slower, slower. Make it look good. It's gotta look good for photos. Do all these little highlights. Again, if you chose a color that doesn't show up against the first color, you need to switch colors, or you need to add more yellow or something so that it shows up. So if it doesn't show up, it's like you didn't do it. Nothing happened. All right. Then you can always, I'm kind of following all the little ridges of what's sculpted, but you can always make your own ridges. Waiting for a Ruffles have ridges joke or something. Okay, so we got that. That's kind of looking cool. I'm gonna insist over here. Bonkety bonkety. Again, using my paint is full opacity. It's a full thickness. So it actually shows up when I put it on the model. I'm just being very careful to just put it in small spots. I'll do some down here. Some more big old splotches up here. The inside of these steps is definitely going to need a bunch of OSL light hitting. That. You always want to come from the direction of the light source. Like even these ledges, maybe the light dissipates as it goes out. It's hitting the ledge, and it kind of disappears. On this side, hits the ledge, and fades to nothing. Do down here, up here. Right here. Remember when we talked about the highlights on the guy and we did little lines? Do some little lines out here. Just to very quickly get some light coming forward. I'm trying to make this light like rounded so it mimics the airbrushing I did. That. Boom, boom, boom. But we're not done yet. We need a really bright yellow. So I'm going to use this Flash Gets yellow. So the reason I'm not using the shadows yellow is, see, it's a little bit, it's not as vibrant as this. So if I was doing something else, I would totally use this. But for this, I need a very, very yellow color. So any color you have in your collection that's just like pure yellow. Not orangey yellow, just yellow, like that. We'll mix it with some of our orange. And let's put some of this right in the middle. And I'm kind of putting it on splotchy because I want it to look kind of stippled or not perfect. Also, it's faster to do it this way. The truth comes out. Mm-hmm. But no, if I'm doing it on studio models, I probably start the exact same way, so it goes quick. But then I slow down and I blend everything in much better. Or I'll do much more stippling so that it really smooths out. But this comes out. We got some. So anywhere where it's more yellow is like a hot spot. So we can kind of maybe have little pockets of it further out. This over here. I want to have some really ridiculously bright areas. Up in here. Maybe not everywhere, but just every once in a while there's a little pocket of really bright light reflecting off of this. One could argue that since this is like bronze or gold, it would all be really bright light, but sometimes that doesn't look good for the whole piece. So little pockets of it I think are perfect. So we'll put a little bit more right up in here. This is the brightest spot where people are getting in and out of the portal. That looks cool. Down here. Obviously, the more careful you are with this, the better it will look. But you see that you can actually get a pretty good result even going fast. And then as we get closer to the center part, I'm going to go more and more just using pure yellow. Actually, let's make this a little bit brighter all around. So one thing to remember when you're doing OSL type things, there are no shadows in a light source at all. So like if you look at oncoming traffic when you're driving your car, there are no shadows in the headlights. They're just all bright. So think of that when you're doing something really bright like this. My darkest color is that molten orange. That's my shadow basically. And then everything else is a very saturated, very bright color. And that gives me a very intense looking warp portal, basically. Pull all these out like this. Tintel. All right. We're still doing good. I could put 3 more highlights on this.
In 10 minutes? Yeah,
I actually could because each highlight's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So now I'm going to use this Dorn yellow, which is a very light yellow. Dorn. And this color is definitely my brightest light sourcey type color. So see how bright that looks? And we'll just kind of stipple it around. I want it to look like energy bursts, so like they're kind of like flying out and fading and getting hotter and colder and hotter and colder. Something like that. Maybe we'll have a couple of these really bright bursts off of a couple areas in the metallics. So I guess at the end of this, don't be afraid of really vibrant colors because they can really help your paint jobs, especially in small bursts. Looks fantastic. Like that. A little bit up into this.
Ooh.
Looks pretty cool. It's funny too with this getting brighter how dark it's starting to make these guys look, but that's okay. All right, so now we need to do a really bright light orange color right there. So I think we're gonna do a little bit of this one. I need more than that. Clearly, it's Monuments Orange.
Okay.
See, it says orange right there. Oh, light orange. So you remember, you write it on the bottle.
I'm like trying to give links and stuff
Yeah.
to everything, so
Oh man,
that helps.
you are rocking.
Yeah. I know.
All right. Let's spray out our orange that we had in there. Clean out my airbrush. And we'll add some more orange in here. So this is a lighter shade of orange. It's a brighter shade of orange. So hopefully what will happen is we'll sort of start softening up some of what we painted on there so it doesn't look quite so abrupt. But we'll also start raising up our light brightness of the glow. So let's start down on here. Like that, so that sort of lightens things up a little bit. We'll do it up here. Do it on those outside edges a little bit. So that definitely toned down all of our highlights right there. But we can put them right back on. So do a little bit more right there in front. And once you got that, come back with my brush. Put in a really light yellow. Feather that in. Feeling that hot heat of the Actually, it's probably not hot. I mean, people have to go through this. So maybe it's just very warm, orangey colored spectral dust or whatever. But or maybe it is super hot, but it doesn't burn you. Four minutes.
Can he do it?
It's all the time in the world.
Yeah.
I feel like a Top Chef or something. Like, oh my gosh. Spoons down.
I'm just gonna yell brushes down in 4 minutes.
Yeah. So that's actually looking pretty cool. I'm digging it. We got a cool warp gate for our game.
Oh yeah.
So you may ask, why would I put this on, airbrush it, and then have to put it on again? It's creating layers of color, basically. Now I can start putting even smaller little lines through here. And that just starts, overall, it adds to the effect. So you don't have to do it this way, but I like to do it this way because it just adds to my painting. Makes it a little bit better, I think. Of course, a finished paint job is always the best because then you don't have to paint it again.
That's true.
Like that. We'll put a couple of these really bright streaks up in here. Maybe over here. All right, as we're wrapping up, any other little tidbit questions you might have? Answers? Or whatever. It'd be a good time to ask.
Now is a great time to ask.
I'm going to... I want some more of that vibrant orange, or the darker orange. So, I'm going to clean out my airbrush really quick. Literally have seconds.
2 minutes.
We got 2 minutes? Oh, we got...
Just kidding, 1 minute.
1 minute. We got plenty of time. Oh, do we even have enough orange paint? That's the question. Just barely, I think. Or not. Who knows? Okay. So I'm going to spray it just down here a little bit. I like that better. Cool. And that's time. All right. Well, thank you all for stopping by. Liz and I had a blast. Put some spectral glow on things. We put some actual OSL type glow on things. And we got this guy kind of base coated, almost all the way. It showed some highlights, shadow tricks, all that good stuff. Any last words, Liz?
So we had a question for like airbrush setup / paints.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody has questions regarding like what kind of things that you need for an airbrush setup or what kind of paints would be good for getting for your airbrush, send me an email because I think that's going to be the quickest way to be able to do all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Send me an email at lizhunt@miniaturemonthly.com. And I'll type that in the chat too.
She will send you off some links for stuff you can buy or choose not to buy.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true. I've got links and all of that kind of stuff already saved, so it's just easiest to be able to send that out all at once. So.
Once again, thanks for stopping by. I hope you guys have enjoyed DiceFest. We've enjoyed spending time with you all, and I hope you got something out of it. We have recorded this show, so it will be up on the Flying Frog YouTube channel at some point within the next couple weeks. So, anyways, have a good evening, and definitely go to the little hangout here in an hour or so. That'll be pretty cool.
30 minutes.
It's in 30 minutes.
And it's a Zoom link.
It's a Zoom link.
On Flying Frog's page right now. So
that's right.
If y'all want to go and join that.
Cool beans. All right. We'll see y'all later. Bye now.
Good night.